Chapter 551, The Ten Commandments. Second commandment, thou shalt not use my name in vain. Third commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Fourth commandment, honor thy father, thy mother, and thy children as you love me. Fifth commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. Sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill the innocent. Seventh commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness, frame, or violate contracts. Eighth commandment, serve me with your heart, not with your offerings. Ninth commandment, those who have committed lesser wrongdoings first atone for your sins before seeking forgiveness. 10th commandment, honor my name by helping your compatriots and companions. One commandment after another echoed in the ears of the bald rebel, Kalet, causing him to completely prostrate himself. He held his head close to the ground, uncontrollably trembling slightly with reverence, fear, and excitement. As a mid-sequence beyonder, a rebel who had once been educated in the Phasek Empire, he had sufficient insight to understand that the worship of the sea god was based more on fear. Fear of powerful forces, fear of the fearsome natural risks that mankind faced, and many rituals that retained primitive bloodshed. A backward faith that reveled in inhumane and uncivilized practices, something that would be eliminated sooner or later. However, the faith he had developed since he was young had made him afraid to go against the divine revelation. He could only bury the idea of modifying the ritual process deep in his heart and avoid the parts which conflicted with his own wishes as much as possible. Now the sea god's sudden change left him extremely delighted. It was as if he could see the so-called primitive totem, that outsiders claimed it to be, evolving into a true god. Blessed are we, blessed are the rebels, blessed are the true believers. In his blurred vision, Kalet raised his head, spread his hands sincerely, and placed them against his mouth. I will abide by your teachings, as if I am praising your name. The blurry figure in front of him disappeared, the magnificent voice by his ears vanished, and the scene in the cave returned to its original state. However, Kalet knew that everything was no longer the same. He moved his elbows several times and quickly crawled back to his wheelchair. He once again sat on it and turned to the other side of the cave. Kalet quickly met with Edmonton. This member of the resistance with a blue sea serpent tattoo was standing in front of the deity figurine that was bleeding abnormally. His forehead was a mix of scarlet red and black, dirty and gruesome. However, Edmonton's expression was joyful, excited, and satisfied. He looked at Kalet and blurted out, "Did you receive the revelation?" "Yes, it's the aura of God, just like before." Kalet nodded in excitement. Not only has God reappeared over the land, but he has also rebuilt his covenant. Edmonton let out a sigh of relief. I was even suspecting that I was hallucinating before. It seems like as long as an outsider touches the holy sword, God will be able to walk the land again. There's no need for it to be completely lifted. Kalet chimed, "Indeed. The reason why the deity figurine shattered and bled is because God has changed his image. We must build a new one, just like the scenes we saw earlier." God also showed his sacred emblem. Above the symbol of the waves, there was a scepter in the shape of lightning, surrounded by strong winds, Edmonton said as he recalled. Kalet immediately patted the armrest of his wheelchair. "Let's find the high priest right now. He should have also received the revelation. We will usher in a new world." Above the gray fog, Klein put down the sea god's scepter and rubbed his temples in exhaustion. He had noticed a problem earlier. The sea god's scepter could respond to ritualistic magic, which meant that it could provide a certain amount of strength to help the worshipper complete the ritual and achieve their goals. However, it could only be concentrated within his domain and could not exceed the limit. Whatever could be done was relatively limited. For example, the Evernight goddess could use a method of influencing fate to let her, believers, naturally obtain the money they needed and pay their debt. As for the sea god scepter, it could at most produce fake money on the altar, and after a while, it would become ineffective and return to its true form. This is the difference between a false god and a true god. Besides, apart from the gray fog, as long as it fulfills the procedure and prayer, the sea god scepter is capable of automatically responding to ritualistic magic, unless it will use up more than half of its power in one go. This might be why the steps to ritualistic magic are extremely important. Above the gray fog, prayers will be screened, reduced to points of light. The sea god scepter is unable to automatically respond, hence requiring me to manually handle them. This makes it relatively troublesome. It's impossible for me to stay here all day. Of course, there's also a benefit to it, as long as the prayer doesn't have any mistakes and it is accurately pointed towards the sea god scepter. Regardless of how perfunctory the ritual is, they will be able to receive a response. The only criteria is that I'm in a good mood. I'll think of a solution when I'm free. I'll make it so that even if the sea god scepter is above the gray fog, it will be an automated answering machine. Produce a paper angel? That's useless, as it doesn't have any soul injected into it. Make a mechanical and rigid puppet to handle the repeated and trivial ritualistic magic. I wonder if a marionettist has powers related to this. At the very least, Risego only showed traits of controlling a person like a puppet. As Klein's thoughts slowly settled, his eyes moved to the iron cigar case. After some research, he discovered that this cigarette case that had a severely corroded exterior had undergone some abnormal changes. It was firmer, tougher, and more resistant to corrosion. However, it was still within a comprehensible and acceptable range of normal humans. It isn't equipped with any special properties. However, if it were placed here for a few years, decades, or even longer where it holds beyonder characteristics and mystical items, perhaps it could really evolve into a sealing case whose effects would gradually fade one day. The corner of Klein's mouth twitched, and he turned his head to look at the junk pile in the corner. They were covered by the gray fog, almost blending in with the surroundings. Klein laughed dryly and looked away. He fiddled with the crushed golden wine cup again, confirming that there was nothing wrong with it. After doing all this, he entered the real world and summoned himself once more to bring the sun brooch and other items back to his room in the inn. At this very moment, the clouds in the sky had disappeared, and the moon was scattering its crimson tranquility. The entire city of generosity, Bayam, remained asleep in its dreams. 9 a.m., Cathedral of Waves. Alger was summoned, and by using the excuse of a confession, he once again met the diocese bishop, Chogo. Look for this person. Chogo handed over the portrait in his hand. Another mission, what's going on recently? Alger muttered in his mind as he unfolded the piece of paper. When he saw the contents of the portrait, he almost couldn't control his laughter. It was impossible to tell if the figure in the portrait was male or female or what they looked like. How was he supposed to find them? In a split second, he thought of something and didn't try to hide his change in mood. Instead, he deliberately blurted out, "Who is this?" The portrait depicted an unusually blurry and mysterious person, with no characteristics that could be used to aid in a search. There was no such mission yesterday. A sudden demand to pursue this person this morning. What happened last night? Kalvatua perished completely. With that happening, the church and the military would definitely search for its remains. Saimim Island is the clue. This person took away the most important item ahead of them. Who is this person? Alger's heart skipped a beat, and he almost didn't dare meet Chogo's eyes. Chogo nodded. A dirty, despicable thief. He may be from Intis or Fasak, and he may belong to the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun or the Church of the God of Combat. Someone from Intis or Fasak, or someone from the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun or the Church of the God of Combat. Why would there be such a guess and conclusion? His Eminence John Cotman only received little information at the scene and was unable to pinpoint the target. In this case, it's indeed possible to presume that this person is from either Intis or Fasak, as the main supporters of the resistance and Kalvatua are from those two countries. There is reason to believe that they may have already known where Kalvatua was hiding. It fits my theory from before. Of course, it could also be something else. Alger controlled his emotions and asked, "What did he do?" You don't need to know. Just pay attention to any abnormalities from people from Intis or Fasak in Bayam. Yes, also include the locals who have become beyonders. Also, find the people who previously posted the notice on the front door of the cathedral. They might know something, and they could quickly give you further information, George ordered in a deep voice. This is indeed a direction. This is tantamount to telling me that this person has something to do with the notice and the perishing of Calvatua. I wonder whose hands Calvatua's beyonder characteristic landed in. Who? Right, the world is in Bayam. Something happened to Calvatua not long after he came here. Could this be Mr. Fool's purpose? Would this help him in the process of removing the seal and regaining his strength? Alger's pupils contracted as he recalled his conjecture from a while ago. When he woke up, Klein, who had reaped a bountiful harvest last night, was uplifted and in a good mood. He decided to treat himself today and make sure that his 3 meals would be sumptuous and delicious. As he pushed open the door and walked into the living room, he saw that Danitz was out of bed, untying the bandage and splint around his arm. He recovered that quickly. Klein was stunned for a moment. Seeing Jayaman Sparrow look over, Danitz chuckled and said, "My ability at recovering isn't too bad. My sequence 9 is called Hunter. I received a clear improvement in various aspects of my body, allowing me to surpass ordinary humans. When it comes to combat, I experienced a great enhancement. Besides, I'm already at sequence 7. Sequence 9 Hunter. I've killed one, and I know the corresponding sequence 6's name is Conspirer." Klein suddenly recalled the first enemy he encountered back when he first arrived in Backland. It had sucked him into a maelstrom that he was almost unable to extricate himself from. Sequence 8 Provoker, Klein asked in passing. He had long since guessed Danitz's beyonder pathway from his adeptness at using fire. It was the Red Priest pathway, which Roselle had called a true man. Sequence 7 was called the Pyromaniac, also known in ancient times as Fire Mage. Danitz froze for a second, thinking that Jayaman Sparrow was doubting him. He subconsciously raised his voice. "Do you think I'm not good at provoking?" "No, I'm an expert in this field.